Aloha, beautiful beings, and welcome to another episode of the Yoni Havana podcast, where we explore consciousness, looking into how things work in the universe so we can enjoy life more and become more whole. My guest today is masculine evolution guide and modern-day medicine man, Kyle Anker. In this episode, Anker explains why helping men become a true man is one of the most important things we need to do right now, and how recreating rites of passages with transformational coaching, psychosomatic psychotherapies, and plant medicine are going to support these transformations. Why it's extremely important for indigenous shaman and Western medicine people to collaborate and learn from one another, the importance of harm reduction and harm mitigation in medicine work, and the importance of coaching and building group trust before and after medicine retreats. Anker also shares why MDMA is his number one choice for profound healing transformational work, and what it's like to live in Costa Rica, day-to-day living, jungle challenges, community, and authenticity. If you find value in this conversation, please share with someone you love. So enjoy this critical and timely conversation about the future of manhood and humanity with Kyle Anker. Aho. Anker, thank you for coming out to the show. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Yoni. Excited to be here.
You know, it was pretty cool how I ran into you because I got back on Instagram as part of just doing my podcast. I was off social media for a while, just kind of anchoring down on what is my new mission, purpose, and, you know, just being very focused. And there's a lot of great things about social media. One of them is how I found you and finding like-minded people and learning from them. At the same time, I don't feel immune to spending more time than I like or getting distracted sometimes with the things that I like on social media. But anyways, as I was back on social media, I don't know, I ran into you. I'm like, oh, this guy seems to be doing very similar work that I'm doing, especially with the initiation, rite of passages for men and medicine work. And then I saw you on the Little Quantum Telegram group asking questions that I felt fit to answer because I'm a big fan. I actually had their founder and CEO, Philip, the chief science advisor, Ian, and I just recorded an episode with Crew, Philip's wife, who was part of the company yesterday. She was in Santa Teresa while we were recording. That episode is coming out soon, or came out by the time this one came out. So yeah, all of that, I was like, this guy's showing up in my life like 2 times in like a week. So I figured like I'll reach out and let's have a conversation.
Yeah, I didn't realize there were that many coincidences. I love that. Yeah, I love like following the threads that we see and leaning in and seeing what's there. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for inviting me on. These topics around men's work and rites of passage are the most near and dear to me. So any opportunity to talk more about that, I am happy to seize.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of support in that way. Every time I talk about the work or I do the work with men, which I just got back from a trip a few days ago, and I keep getting the reinforcement that this is important and valuable work, the most valuable work that I do. And a lot of times there are people that are called to do the work. I'm talking about men that are called to do the work. They're like, oh, I'm in. And when it's game time, I'm going to use the word the chicken, but they get cold feet because it's hard work, as you know, and it looks like you've done some of your own work. I just saw social media just a couple of days ago or yesterday, you know, doing medicine work. It's pretty tough. And, you know, I don't put any pressure on anybody, but a lot of times I feel like I'm kind of, I'm ready to go. People are somewhat ready to go, but there's a little bit of a pull and push there. And I'm trying to be as surrendering as possible with the balance of giving the nudge sometimes to somebody of like, you know, there's no better time than now, one, but also there's better time when one feels, I think there's perfect timing, divine timing for everything. So it's been interesting on my end as people reach out to me, and how much on my end to give them a motivational call to come to the work and how much to be hands off. It's an art on my end, at least. Not sure. What about you?
I would agree that it is something that is challenging for men, and rightly so, because we have been separated from these ways of maturing and gathering with men for a long time. And that's the reason why we are where we are at in the world, because men have lost connection to each other. And through that, they've lost connection with themselves. So while there is this burgeoning awareness of the value of men's work, and you can't matriculate within any sort of conscious circle without hearing about it, whether or not it's actually being done and done well is another story entirely. So it's something you got to feel the call to for sure, but there also has to be a clear and consistent and inviting offering. And I say that because the fundamental medicine for men's work is men's circles, right? That's the simplest thing. That's the way in. And I've seen so many men's circles come and go up here in this mountain in Chiripo, where there are so many fantastic people working in so many conscious and spiritual modalities, doing so much good work in the world, but they couldn't keep a circle going. And I sat back for like a year and just watched, and I'm like, what's the problem here? And it was so clear to me, but I waited still for something to happen. I believe the reason why all the other circles failed is because they were over-engineered, overproduced. Donation, potluck, movement practice before and afterward, all these different things. All men need is a place to sit in a circle with other men and an invitation to speak about what's going on in their life, about the trouble they're having. That is enough right now. And you do that long enough, you develop the rapport and build trust, which is really hard for men to have for each other, despite what they say. Then you think about co-creating something like, okay, I was doing my men's circle here in that simple way for a good few months. And I saw a regular gathering. I'm like, okay, I'm going to open up for an hour and a half beforehand for some Hape and Sananga. Pretty basic, jungle medicine for those who work with a lot of medicine, but to be in that space just with men and then to go into a circle with men afterward. It's little by little. Otherwise, people will just they'll bounce off. You'll get a high bounce rate, technically speaking, if you try to do too much, too fast, too soon, which is the colloquial definition of trauma. I'm not saying it's traumatizing, but it's too much. And you also have a lot of immature males. And I use the language around this really clearly because men's work is what creates men. Most people running around are boys, right? And you have a lot of young, kind of, as Iron John would say, Robert Bly, the book Iron John, these puers, these ascenders, these young men who are going around and above the problems and doing all the medicine, feeling great and in the pretty lights, and they want to do men's work, but they can't even hold a weekly meeting. You can't even depend on them to have a space that's consistent. And that's how most of this goes up in flames. So that's where it starts with the men's circles. And I'll put a pause in there for now.
That's lovely perspective. And I'm co-leading a group of men, a community, a brotherhood of 21 men at the moment. It started in June 2021. It doesn't mean that all 21 men show up. They're in different parts, mostly in the United States. And everybody went through the initiation, the rite of passage, the retreat. That's where it starts. Somebody wants to have an upgrade, and the retreat is pretty intensive. Medicine, focused retreat with all kinds of other practices, a lot of integration. A lot of, as I was saying, just sitting and just naturally sitting and doing what men do, which is relating. Our group and our brotherhood is specifically for masculine men. We were thinking about it when we started. Is this open for all men? We decided the container will be most effective if it's just for masculine men, the men that we attracted. Once there'll be another energy in here, perhaps there'll be some hesitation, or people will be walking on their tiptoes and eggshells in terms of the language that they're using. So specifically, we bring people, we attract people that have very similar issues, whether they're 30 years old or 60 years old. And the average age is, I would say, around 48, let's say. I'm 36, my partner is 50, and this is just kind of the average age that we've been attracting. And interestingly enough, everything has happened organically, whether it's our monthly online meeting calls and just the first annual camping trip that I just returned from a few days ago for everybody in the community to come and strengthen the bond. Everything is happening organically, and we do start every day. And this is what I lead there: the morning routine, which is an hour, 10-minute
Mm,
meditation, about 10 to 12 minute breath work, usually Wim Hof, and then movement for about 15 to 20 minutes. But in between, we're chit chatting, throwing some tunes on, and dancing in the end, and then get into. We have a whole schedule, and everything is pretty calculated, and just everything came organically, though, in terms of the meals, in terms of the downtime, and the workshops that we do about polarized relationships and holistic lifestyle practices, and empowering men while they're in that neuroplastic state, while they're in the more vulnerable, very present state, to have tools moving forward in their life. And it's interesting how you said it. Like, sometimes in the circles that we do online, I make a very short kind of presence exercise. So the meditation will be like 6 minutes. Maybe we'll do like one round of breath work, because I kind of feel like people are ready to share. People are ready to like open their hearts, and they're ready to be in the circle. Perhaps they have some other things later on. So I think, as you're saying, sometimes the overwhelm of the amount of to do, which I've been there. I got into biohacking and movement practices, the most extreme things in some ways, where the practice itself would be minimum of 2 hours. So
mhm.
then the barrier to actually get something done would be like the 0 or 100, but then the 100 is not sustainable, especially when people have kids and a lot of other responsibilities and desires and such. So yeah, it definitely was resonating with me as you have your perspective. I'm curious to hear how you. I don't know if you're from Costa Rica. You ended up in Costa Rica. I'd love to hear your story on where you are right now, location wise, and
Yeah.
how you got into this very, what I see as very valuable work in the world, working with men.
Yeah. So I'm in Costa Rica, southern zone, up in Mount Chiripo. It's about an hour inland from a very popular port called Dominical Beach that most people know. You go past Diamante Valley, it's like a little 20-25 minutes past that. How did I get here? Well, I tell this story so many times, and every time I do, it's like, all right, let's find a way to condense it further. Well, I grew up in Rhode Island, lower middle class, blue collar suburb, and was raised in a typical standard broken American family, raised by my mother. And, first in my family to get out of that place and see the world and go to college. And I didn't know what to do with myself. So I studied computers. I ran around the world for a little while in corporate America at General Electric doing IT, computer project management stuff. I realized it wasn't for me. I ended up leaving that behind, traveling the country for a bit in my van, couch surfing, just figuring out what to do next. Landed in Los Angeles, 27 years old then, and started to experiment with psychedelics. So I started at a pretty late age. And I'm kind of
Hmm.
grateful for that from the stories I've heard from those who did it when they were young.
Hmm.
And a couple of years of that in the festival scene, including Burning Man, led me to ayahuasca in about 2014. And I had a wake up call with ayahuasca and doing MIT, which is like landmark large group awareness training,
Hmm.
back to back to those things. I learned about stories and triggers and the shadow. And at that point in my life, I had everything on paper: a beautiful job, a beautiful woman, a beautiful home in Venice Beach, no shared walls bungalow, pre Silicon Beach. It was quite nice. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? Like, I got it all. And I'm so unhappy. This woman I have, she's so on purpose. She knows exactly who she is and what she wants. And we're always fighting, and I'm yelling, and I got a great job. I'm making a lot of money, but like, I feel tired. I feel stuck. I feel depressed. But after I did the ayahuasca and did that training, I had a new vocabulary, and I started to speak with my partner, who was a therapist, whom I never was curious about her work,
Hmm.
which struck me like a thunderbolt. I'm like, oh, wow, I never really asked about what you do. She's like, yeah, Kyle, which is what I was going by then. I know this stuff. I do this work that you just did. I do it in a slower fashion. Large group awareness training kind of kicks you through your breakthrough. Therapy is slower. And I'm like, well, tell me what's happening here between us. Tell me what's going on. We looked up through the symptoms, and a lot of it was, surprise, surprise, like narcissistic traits, narcissistic empath dynamic. It wasn't full blown narcissism, because if it was, I wouldn't have admitted it. Thanks to her, she told me that. But that was enough for me to realize that no, this ends here. I've always seen myself as a good person, wanting to do well, wanting to do good, and realizing what was underneath this pain I was experiencing, the pain I was doing to everyone else, was not going to continue.
Yes.
So I threw my hands up and I'm like, I gotta go. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. And then this man shows up. He's recruiting people for some wild project to spread the word about psychedelic healing. And he comes to me through a friend I had. He's like, I need someone to help me build a website. Oh, I know a guy. Got a text Kyle. I met some crazy dude that did mushrooms for like a month, and now he has all these amazing ideas. He wants to use all his money that he's put into big pharma and tobacco to build this platform to educate the world about psychedelic healing. Sounds like the kind of crazy you'd appreciate. So I'm sitting on my stoop in Venice the next morning talking to this guy, and I'm like, here, I'll go to Bangkok with you to work on these crazy ideas. Why not? Because I don't know what I'm doing anymore, and whatever it is I'm doing, I need to stop. So that started my journey of trusting in where spirit wanted to take me. I didn't even have that language then, but ever since that time with the ayahuasca, that one time, it's like I was going this way in my ship, and then the degree changed a little bit. So over the years, I got deeper into the medicine. Over the years, I got deeper into trusting myself and trying new ways of working that felt good in my heart, like on purpose. And then I found my teacher, some older man who offered himself to me as a mentor after seeing me in ceremony for a whole weekend with his medicine, Wachuma, and noticing I was lacking this spiritual paternal father figure, which I now see as the mentor coming into my life, which is crucial for the development of a boy into a man. And his offer to be that just bowled me over. And I'm glad at this point in my life, I didn't know how to simply receive and not need to feel like to reciprocate immediately, because I told him, yeah, okay, on one condition. Whatever you're doing here, and it was his first time getting into serving medicine, I want to help. I want to help you do this. So there was this pause that over the years of working with this man, I can only imagine what he was considering, like to say yes to this stranger pretty much to support you in facilitating and producing sacred ceremony with this cactus medicine for 20 to 30 people, 2 days in a row, a couple times a month. And we did that. And at that time, I was happily, interestingly, fulfillingly employed doing some health and wellness startup stuff. But I knew where I was going was with the medicine. And I prayed, I'm like, show me how I can support this movement. Show me how I can help people come alive, wake up, and make the right choices to heal like I have. And Spirit just kept giving me the perfect relationships and experiences to deepen into that. A couple other points that are notable in this journey is I ended up going to the Amazon, and I was already kind of down and out. Like, I lost my job, my business partners turned on me, and my partner at the time, who was a huge lesson, but also we were so toxically codependent, she's like, come to the Amazon with me. And I'm like, she wore me down. I didn't want to go, but I went. And with the Hunikuin for like 2 weeks, drank like 8 to 10 times in 2 weeks, 200 people per ceremony, no intake, no preparation, no integration afterwards, no skill development. It's beautiful when I was there, and I had all the archetypal downloads. I saw the rainbow serpent. I saw grandmother ayahuasca as this benevolent tree figure looking down upon me. I saw a ghost dancing around the fire under the full moon with my naked eyes. All of this was confirmed by the indigenous there. And then afterwards, I was sent home with no support, no roadmap. I had my mentor, thank God, because he kept me on track. And I went down for 3 years, anxiety, depression, suicidality. And then I started to come up bit by bit. He helped me build my support network. I found Being True to You, who I trained with to become an integration coach. And then COVID came. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm just going to do what I love now. I'm going to stop playing small, because I was doing medicine work on the ground with my friends and family for a couple of years. And of course, all the work with my teacher the few years. And now I got a certificate as an integration coach. I went to Costa Rica to visit a friend of mine who was in that class with me. Idea was to be there for 2 weeks and come back to Berkeley to start my practice. But Berkeley was quickly looking like hell on earth to me as the pandemic went on. And everything in Costa Rica opened up to me the most beautiful and magnificent way. And let me tell you, I had an astrology reading before I came, And this guy showed me astrocartography for the first time in my life. And he said, if you come during these 2 weeks, because you have so many Jupiter lines running through here, magnificent, abundance, mysticism, career, your life will change. And so many things happened to me those 2 weeks. I decided to just move everything here and not look back. No more 1 foot in tech and 1 foot in the plant world. I just went full in, and it was hard, but it was worth it. And now I'm here. And after about 2 years now of like coaching people every day, through the group that trained me, who partners with ketamine clinics and ibogaine clinics, and still working on my private practice as well, it became really clear to me that men's work is the most important part of this work, that my mission is to help boys become men by recreating rites of passage with transformational coaching, with psychosomatic psychotherapies, with plant medicines and psychedelics, to recreate these initiations that we have lost, because the world is in the state it's in right now because of a lack of mature men. In fact, and this could be kind of controversial, what we need is the patriarchy, because the patriarchy implies mature men who are leading. If you break that word up, Petros is the archetype of the father energy, which is lacking. The world is run by adult boys. If they were men, we wouldn't have these problems. So you bring men back together with men's work. Trust other men, trust yourself. Then you could trust women and come back into relationship with them. And then you build stable family units. You want to talk about pandemics right now? How about single parenthood? What about all these lost fathers and estranged mothers? What about this idea in the new age, which is so destructive, of just fanatical independence and sovereignty, which is coupled with all these forms of non-monogamy? We are losing the family unit. And that's how the powers that be take over when we're divided. You bring the families back together, you got communities. You have strong communities, you solve the world's problems. It's that simple. And that's what I'm doing.
Damn. Mic drop right there. Man, what a story. First of all, you're an amazing storyteller, and your story is absolutely beautiful, and it touched my heart, and I'm sure it touched everybody's heart who's listening. It's huge. Your perspective and your embodiment of the work that you've done, and your understanding of what needs to be done, in my intuition, feels very on point. And interesting enough, on the patriarchy, I had a rib injury that happened 3.5 years ago. Still have a rib out of place that happened right before COVID. For the first time in my life, I had to ask for help. First chiropractor that I've seen was doing some Reiki work on me. And my last session was when she kind of like, the session was over, and she says something to me, something like, we got to crush the patriarchy. And I'm looking at her. This person has been a vessel to work with my energy. And she's saying that pretty much she needs to crush me. I think I realized what she's saying in my understanding now. She was saying we need to crush the toxic masculinity. We need to crush the boyhood that you've been talking about, that is obviously not leading from a place of manhood. We can't let boys lead the way, but it's a misunderstanding. And there's so much confusion going on in the world, as you're saying, whether it's by the individuality and a lot of other concepts that are so have infiltrated our people's minds so well by repetition, and with so many other schemes, I'm going to call them for now. I'm not going to use different words for now that come to my mind, but this is what happened. And I love that you're putting your emphasis there on helping boys become men, because we have a lot of boys that are also 90 years old. They're just boys. They're just, the world is run by kids. If some of them have matured, great, but it's not a lot of them that mature to become men and women. That's just a fact. I have 2 kids of my own. I have a 4-year-old, I have a 1-year-old. And I explained to the 4-year-old, it's pretty much kids. It's growing up kids. I'm a kid too. She asks me sometimes, like, you're the adults. You can't be a kid. I'm like, yeah, I can be a kid too. I'm constantly a kid, but I can portray and act out of a different place sometimes, of being the adult with the experience and going through the initiations that I've went through. And this is how I see it. Like, obviously everybody wants to be a kid. People cherish having the imagination, the creativity, the awe, the bliss, let's say. And you talked about some of the bypassing of boys that have tasted medicine and constantly looking at the light. And I've had that too. When I when I did ayahuasca, and I was 5 years ago in 2018. I cruised through three ceremonies. Only the end of the third ceremony, that's when I was handed the real darkness, which I'm very grateful for, because I feel like my bandwidth of consciousness has really grown once I was able to accept and look in the eye of darkness. Really, the highs became higher, the lows became lower, and that's really when I became a stronger man. I think that was really the biggest change in terms of boys to men, boy to man was that. So
Mm.
yeah, a lot of it's crazy how, how we were, you call them coincidences. Now I'm I don't really use this word anymore. I feel like this all being orchestrated in a beautiful way. And it's interesting. I had somebody else on the podcast talking about divine timing, and everything is happening the way it should be. But I see the action a lot of times in this co-creation. Like, I could have not reached out to you. I could have reached out to you a year after. A lot of times I'm like, this just take the action, send a message, whatever there is, I don't know, anxiety or some sort of the hesitation to reach out to somebody out of a stranger. You call the stranger with the mentor that he had. Then they're a stranger. Then with the action, they're going to become a friend, or more than that, right? A
Mm.
mentor or a partner, etc., collaborator. So yeah, I see the action. I was talking about the man earlier. The action, I think, is very important. And in the way that I'm living, a lot of times, if I feel the call to do the action, I'm gonna take the action at the moment, especially if it's a small action, especially if it takes 5 minutes or less. I'm gonna
Mm.
go write Anker a message. This is what's going on. I'm feeling the call to connect with you, and Anker gets back to me shortly after, says like, "Yeah, I'm in," which was pretty cool. So I do sense an action there. I think it's huge, especially for men. We're talking about the fire. We're talking about transmutation. We're talking about the masculine, taking things and transmuting them into something. The paternal, the patriarchy, putting some order into the chaos. And perhaps this
Yeah.
language may not resonate with everybody, but some people that listen to this podcast will know what I'm talking about. How important for creation is to play this dance, and how important it is to have a healthy masculinity leading this world in a way that the femininity wants to be led.
Yeah.
Femininity and the feminine power is creating, and we're just putting a little bit of shape and directing it, and hopefully, yeah, it
Mhm.
will be done by men and not boys. That's just a fact. I mean, boys have a lot of beautiful things about them, but there's a natural progression that has been going on for who knows how long, that brings more coherence and more balance and more beauty and harmony into our lives. And that's just comes with experience. It comes with more hardship. That's, to me, that's a fact.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear. So, wow, what a path you've had, and thank you for making this condensed story on that. So now, how long have you been in Chiripo? Is this how you pronounce it?
Yeah. Coming on 2.5 years now. Yeah.
How do you like it?
It just keeps getting better. And what keeps me here is people ask me all the time, what do you love most about it? Tell me about the lush nature, the clean water, and the food you get from your local farmers every week, which is all great. It's the people.
Hmm.
So I am continuing to be humbled and inspired on a daily basis by people who are drawn here. And when I showed up, there was this influx of a new wave of humans coming to this mountain. There have been some people here about 30, 40, 50 years, like an older guard, some elders, and they're well entrenched in doing their good work and their own thing. But there's something about this new wave of younger people really moving and shaking, really bringing the dream of community alive.
Hmm.
People talk about doing community and they all move into a house together and it's just a big mess and everyone's just projecting all over each other and doing hard work. But here, it's a lot of maturity, a lot of groundedness, and a lot of action and results. People are truly doing it. And it's almost like every time I leave the house, even if it's just to go to like the market or to go to a little open mic event, I know it's going to be a profound experience. There's something simple about life here. It's
Hmm.
very powerful. And it tries people. It chews you up and spits you out if you don't have the mettle to stand here for sure.
Hmm.
That's a promise. So yeah, my goal here is to eventually get into a bigger space, get a piece of land, and have that land be the place where I do my work And I don't even like the word retreat because I don't want people to run away from anything. I want them to immerse into this
Mm.
world. I bring people here to get a real taste of what life can be like if they continue the path of choosing themselves and growing and healing.
Mm.
It's not just we're sitting in this beautiful, magnificent retreat center for a couple days or a week in this silo that's unnatural and unusual. I bring them into my community. We go into events. I bring them to a local sweat lodge. I take them to a local ecstatic dance. I hire my friends to come and teach them things. I show them the whole community experience. And yes, we are doing medicine, but they get the real download of what life can become, what it can be like, how open and welcoming and loving and compassionate and honest people can become. Because
Mm.
the people here, man, if you don't open up and you don't know how to ask for help, it doesn't work. I ended up becoming sort of an accidental community leader running the Telegram group for this mountain. And every day people are jumping in. I need help with this. I need help with that. Because you're living in the jungle. It's wild. You don't have access to easy support when your car breaks down and when the power goes out, or you need some certain medicine. Like, it's not there, but people have it. And people show up and they will help you when you ask. And that is so amazing. There's so much magic in the connection here and what people are willing to do for each other.
Oh, sounds like a real village, like a
Yeah.
real village community,
Mhm.
love, which is amazing. I think that's what a lot of people are looking for, especially since 2020, when they realize that, you know, yeah,
Yeah. Coming out of lockdown.
yeah, but realizing also how much the system wasn't working even before, but it was illuminating. There's something I want to touch on that you talked about right before we got on the mic, and that's like the indigenous ways of serving medicine, and they're and now that we're having more younger, let's say, and some Western people come into the medicine space. So I'd love to hear the story really of what happened when you went to the jungle, or
Mhm.
I think you said the Amazon, the jungle, and then following those, let's say, peak experiences. You talked about depression, anxiety for 3 years. So
Mhm.
I'd love to hear first what, in at least from your understanding, what happened there, why it happened, and also what is the missing part there, or the indigenous ways that can accommodate Western, or however we want to call it, modern day people
Yeah.
to immerse themselves in medicine, and grow, uh, and heal.
Cool. Thank you for that. I believe this is one of the most important conversations we need to be having in the medicine space right now. There is such a massive division in this movement between the Westerners, the gringos, and the indigenous. And some major concepts come to mind around this. One of them is the detribalized people, us, and the tribal people, them. Tribal people are integrated. They have a deep and practical relationship with nature and with themselves. They know each other. They know how to care for each other. They have elders and seers and guardians and chieftains, not therapists and psychiatrists who are poor substitutes for all of that. They know how to work with these medicines for their people. Now, enter stage left with Westerners who are doing their best to take care of themselves and excited about the healing potentials of these medicines. And now, thanks to all the publicity with sports celebrities and TV celebrities, everyone's going for the Hail Mary to ayahuasca, amongst all things, above all things, one of the most powerful medicines there is. And how it's happening right now isn't helpful, largely. Not the retreat centers that serve ayahuasca, not the indigenous in their own villages, because they don't know how to care for us. The time is not being spent to understand our issues. They don't know what depression is. They don't know anxiety, PTSD, OCD, ADD. And to say, don't worry, the medicine will take care of you is the biggest bypass of them all. Run away from anyone who says, you'll be fine. Just drink the medicine. So, to make some more brass tacks out of this, when I went to see the Hunikuan in the Amazon at the village in Novo Futuro in Acre, Brazil, a 4-day boat ride from the closest city, sleeping on the banks of the river and vacated schools, whatever we could find. It was beautiful there, like to really be in the heart of that village, in the home of ayahuasca, where the tree that inspired Avatar is. Literally, it was amazing. There was about 100 of us from all different ports of call around the world, all gathered by, ambassadors that were bridges between the indigenous people and the Western world. And to meet people from all different places who want to heal is so beautiful too. I have so many amazing friendships and connections from that still. And we did a lot of medicine. In the 2 weeks we were there, it was like every other day, formal ceremony. And on the non-formal days, you could go to the Maloka and like have ayahuasca light. They're jamming and they're like passing around like watered down shots of ayahuasca. Again, they can do that. They have that relationship. Mm-hmm. We shouldn't quite be doing that. Now, it doesn't take a therapist or a adept psychologist to understand the basics of transference and countertransference, right? When you are in the presence of another person, there is an energetic exchange on many levels, a lot of them subconscious. And as you attune to those energies, whether it's through medicine or through other like psychosomatic work, you become more sensitive to these things. And I'm sure most people listening, anyone who's done psychedelics has known what it's like to feel what's going on somewhere near you in a heightened way. 200 people in this Maloka, 100 people who don't know each other from all the parts of the world, 100 indigenous, two very different tribes of people, histories, energies, in the same place, drinking one of the most powerful plant medicines in the world that opens you up to the cosmos. Like ayahuasca is very cosmic, very visionary. It's not like an embodying medicine like Wachuma. It's not predictable and consistent in opening your heart and creating love like MDMA. It is a cosmic roll of the dice. And you're putting all that in one place. That's unsafe. You got 6 pages, one of their elders, running around blowing smoke and praying, but like that's not enough. And then you do that. One ceremony could have been enough, like, for months worth of like treatment and integration. But we did that like 8 to 10 times in 2 weeks. I had done ayahuasca a few times before going to the Amazon, but that is where all of the massive experiences happened. And what I understand on the other side of that, where there was no integration, no support from the people who brought us there, no practices, no care whatsoever. The medicine worked so deeply in me that I was healing, but healing can feel like depression and anxiety when a lot of deep stuck energy, depressed energy starts to open up. It feels painful, right? They don't teach you this. The indigenous don't know about that. And, the job really comes down to those who are the bridges to know these kinds of things, but they didn't even know better either. The conversation about harm reduction is like still nascent as it is. And I wasn't the only one who got plunged into anxiety and depression afterwards. Like so many other people, I reached out to the WhatsApp group. Well, I'm in pain. I'm waking up feeling like life is more dangerous than death. I'm thinking about ending it all. I don't have the energy to even go on my computer and look for a new job. Like, what do I do? They had nothing for me. Nothing. I was lucky. I had my teacher, and he was guiding me along and like just pushing me in the right direction. So that's one example. Another example here, especially in Costa Rica, another like wild points of call in the world that have medicine, you'll find people traveling with members of the Hunikuan or the Shipibo or the Yawanawa, and day of a ceremony trying to recruit people in little villages like this to drink. And I heard people say, well, don't we need to be on a diet and wait? He's like, no, it's fine. I'll come right along. It'll be great. And I'm just like, wow. You're either really ignorant or you're greedy or some strange and maniacal mix of both. But this is just unsafe. And so to put a little cherry on top of this, because this is how a lot of this work is going. Actually, one more thing, retreat centers, they're all doing it wrong too, for the same reason. No intakes, usually no preparation, and bringing people together from different like communities and families that don't know each other. It's best to work either one-on-one with someone who knows you, has done coaching work beforehand, or with a cohort of people who are like a tribe, like the people in the Amazon, or you've created that synergy. I've worked with a retreat center in Jamaica with mushrooms, and we did like 2 months worth of coaching beforehand. So those people got to know each other beforehand. And then each group was 3 people with 1 facilitator. Ultimate safety. You show me a retreat center doing that, and I'll eat my shirt. A couple of them are starting to do that, but by and large, most retreat centers are perpetuating the problem and creating more dysregulated people. Every day I leave my house and go to some community event, I find someone who has left the retreat center just up the mountain here, just in a mess, needing help, and I help them if I can. So there's that. And then to put a cherry on top, I was at the MAPS conference recently in Denver, and the closing speech that Rick Doblin was giving was interrupted by a barrage of shamanic drumming and these young indigenous, or I don't know if they're full indigenous, but half, but just having a hard time, wanting to be heard. So they get up on stage and they talk about the truths of the colonization and the capitalization and the marginalization of their voices, and their medicines being appropriated. That's happening. That needs to be addressed. But what I heard that really struck me in the gut was that their like final message to the biggest gathering of psychedelic professionals and supporters and helpers in the world was that this movement, whether you call it a renaissance or a revolution, needs to be led by the indigenous. And that won't work. We need to have a synthesis. There needs to be a new offering where they understand how to take care of this. How can they bring their medicine and their wisdom to our communities with our unique ailments and diseases that they don't know about? It's almost like after the Me Too movement, where women had every right to be upset by how the adult boys in the past had taken advantage of them and marginalized them. Women like, the future is female. That's coming from a place of pain. The future is actually a harmonious relationship between masculine and feminine, which we're realizing now. So there's a lot of good happening in this movement, and there's still, to me, so much work to be done if the most prevalent rift is between those who carry these medicines and those who need them. It's still there. And no one's having these conversations.
To just go a little bit deeper, do you think your experience and the other people that went to the 200-person, I don't even know what to call it, marathon,
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I want to put a precursor word to the marathon, an unorganized, marathon. Do you think that was mostly from, a combination of immersing in other people's energies, traumas, different energies, not being able to know what's what? Is this my energy? Is this my memory? Is this my experience? Going back and having no integration whatsoever to pretty much sounds like the most profound experience of everybody there, perhaps except for the indigenous people, are living this and don't have this in the modern day world. New phenomena of ADD and everything that ends with a D, the PTSDs and etc.
All the disorders.
Yeah, the disorders. So, do you think that's what's going on? Pretty much opening up in a space that is not coherent, not close in terms of relational proximity and knowing one another, and then coming home with all of that and opening up to the cosmos in that way, not knowing at all what to do with it. That sounds quite overwhelming.
Yeah, there was no engagement of our human aspect of choice and free will, of getting very clear on why are we doing this? What do we want out of this? Because if you get a really clear why before going into any of these experiences or any transformational life experience, you have the context afterward with which to make meaning of what happened. Otherwise, it's just visions and noises and words. It's like, okay, that happened, but what does it mean to me? How am I going to couch this into my life? So change will happen when you drink that much medicine in that place and you go back to a very different environment. But it's not going to be easy. It's going to be very risky, very painful. Essentially, what was missing was all the harm mitigation and the harm reduction. So, I've come across people from that time and I see where they're at, and they're changed, but they're not always well. They're still working some things out. I owe a lot to who I have become because of that experience, but I know damn well I could have got here faster and with a lot less pain if I was taken care of properly.
How long
Again,
ago
I mean,
was
I
this
went
experience?
in like 2017 ish, I think. 17,
Yeah,
18.
I see.
Yeah.
And we're just curious, where did you find the mentor that you were talking about with the Wachuma?
Yeah. In the
If I
most
may ask about the
serendipitous way.
location.
When I started doing ayahuasca, I found this temple space in Santa Barbara. I was living in LA at the time. I went there for a New Year's Eve ayahuasca weekend. That's how I was celebrating the world. And he came in on Sunday with a tray of like Dixie cups full of cactus powder, which is the worst way to do it. He's gotten a lot better. He's got this great syrup now. He cooks it down.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
Wachuma is very good for integration, especially after ayahuasca, because it's the equal and opposite energy. And something about him just struck me. Like he comes in with this really colloquial, avuncular nature, like just the guy next door, big smile on his face, plain clothes. And I'm like, who's this dude? Okay, I'll drink your powder. And I had the most beautiful day of my life. That helped me realize that the deep master plant work doesn't have to be all darkness and masochism, which was the way I was taking myself through ayahuasca. Because I realized how much I hurt others, I believed my healing had to hurt.
Mhm.
I'm past that now. But he opened me up to the joy of healing.
It's
So
beautiful.
when I heard that he was coming back in a few weeks to do his first full weekend, I signed up, and that's when he saw me and offered himself to me.
Wow, what a beautiful thing. Yeah, I actually, the retreat that I went to in Peru, in the Sacred Valley in Peru, it's outside of Cusco. To the ones who are interested, and I will say on that note, my business partner, whom I'm not in this business, but he co-owns a retreat center in the Sacred Valley in Peru. It's called the Heart Sanctuary, and I will throw the link in there. It does not have the whole preparation that Anker was mentioning, but it is very intense in terms of the form taking and the conversations that people have with the facilitators, and the amount of facilitators to participants is also, the ratios are very well. So I think it's probably 1 to 2, 1 to 3, which is amazing. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a combination of the shaman who is native to Peru and is an amazing guy, and then there's so there are two gringos that run the place, and there are two more native people, and one of the natives also is more westernized. So she spent some time, I think, in the United States. She has good English, and so long story short, they understand gringos better. And this is a an experience from gringos that also ends with Wachuma. This is how my retreat ended. It does
Mm-hmm.
miss, and I think a lot of the retreat opportunities miss the post retreat integrations. Perhaps they'll have a call, perhaps they'll have two calls, but I think the community post retreat and really becoming a community and supporting one another and having a space to be heard and get support is essential moving forward. And I think it's essential for months on end, perhaps at least 6 months or a year, to get together in that group dynamic, that group heart, to be able to relate and to be able to get support. So that's my 2 cents on there on Heart Sanctuary. They opened, I think, about a year, maybe a little bit over a year ago. And I will definitely, my partner will listen to this conversation, and we'll see what upgrades they make to their offering. Perhaps there will be a good amount of group sessions prior to this experience. As Anker is talking about this, and another shout out I'll give is to another organization that I'm a part of. It's called Altered Psychedelic Practitioners. I will throw the link as well. And that organization brings in elders, some people, the more indigenous. It brings therapists. It brings just psychedelic guides, all kinds of people around psychedelic work, so they can learn from one another. And especially those cohorts, wisdom circles, they call them, are combined of not the same professions and same backgrounds. So people can learn from one another and enrich other people's experiences. So we don't get to the point that the tribal people think that we need the tribal people to lead only. It's going to be it needs to be a collaborative effort of all minds and all hearts learning from one another to lead this new renaissance. And I think it is hearing you speak about it from your perspective, that seems to be the best way about it. And it's going to take a good amount of humility on everybody's end and a good amount of work to figure out what's going on in here. So these are the two shout outs I want to throw for the ones that are being called to do IR retreats. And I think from the ones that I know, that's going to be the safest bet and the best bet. And then the way forward with working with medicine and helping people heal and also integrate and embody their healing with the least amount of pain possible. At the same time, I will say healing is, from what I've seen, it's always painful to an extent. The question is, I think, what is going to be the intensity and the length of that pain? Is there going to be unnecessary pain? I think there's some pain is going to be essential. Looking at the mirror, figuring out how we showed up in life or how people have showed up in our lives or past lives is usually going to be pretty painful. And most of the time, if we try to bypass this pain, it will come and bite us in the ass until we integrate that and learn the lesson and find forgiveness and compassion. That's at least has been my experience. Attention all masculine men and those who cherish them in their lives. Discover Men of Integrity, the game-changing community I'm proud to be a part of. Men of Integrity is a vibrant community and brotherhood I co-founded to ignite the divine masculinity within men. Every spiritual path is honored here, recognizing the dynamic dance of both masculine and feminine energies within. At Men of Integrity, our mission is to help men break free from societal molds and rediscover the path to inner strength, emotional authenticity, and genuine fulfillment. But this is more than just breaking free from norms. We're shattering the shackles that tie success to wealth, that restrict men to stoic providers, and confine them to rigid male identities. Instead, we encourage men to embrace values like kindness, care, and wisdom as the true indicators of success. The heart of our work? Immersive retreats that amplify these revelations coupled with unwavering ongoing support. The results? Relationships bathed in a newfound light, a reignited passion for your work, financial harmony, and a love affair with life that knows no bounds. Welcome to the evolution you've been yearning for. Visit our website, moi.community, to read heartfelt testimonials from our members, learn about our vibrant community and transformative retreats, and secure a spot for a life-changing experience that promises to expand your horizons. Aho.
Yeah, I like hearing that because, as I mentioned earlier, there is a shift happening. There are places who are taking great care to offer this medicine in safe ways. I actually bumped into someone at Psychedelic Science who used to work at Rhythmia, which is well known for being just really out of integrity. And he left because of how unsafe everything was and how poorly he imagined they were treating their indigenous. And he started another retreat center here called Reunion, which is integration based. I haven't been to it, but it sounds like a good thing. I also want to talk a bit about the alternatives to ayahuasca, because everyone just seems to be running to that more than anything. And I will tell you, most healing experiences I've had, most practical healing and transformative experiences that I get to participate in and that were very embodying and helped me recover from the Amazon, was work I had done with men who were well-known men's workers and workshop facilitators in many different areas of psychosomatic psychotherapy and tantra, etc., a lot of new age stuff. But they were also students of the consciousness medicine community, which has recently been disbanded because there was some stuff that came up. You've heard about this?
My partner is in the School of Consciousness Medicine now, no,
Okay.
Cern of Consciousness Medicine. So when the scandal happened, that's when they took a pause on things. So yes,
Yeah.
and other people that I work with and collaborate with, and our mentors are from the same School of Consciousness
Yeah.
Medicine. Some
Well, I
is
guess
this,
I now
yeah,
I know why you
yeah,
have a similar modality, because
yeah.
my teachers in that school, the men I work with deeply in the Bay Area while I was healing, practice that way. The woman I lived with in the home where I really started to heal was a practitioner in that school. The way that they hold that medicine, the way that they offer MDMA as a healing medicine, mushrooms as a healing medicine, is profound. What I understand about their way of education without having gone, but being around so many people and hearing so much about it and doing my damnedest to get in. But now it's, there are options. The other schools are happening, but it's so good for the Western heart, for what Westerners need. They really know how to work with us. And I firmly believe, again, take this as my opinion or a subjective point of view. For anyone who's coming to psychedelic therapy and healing for the first time, you've already got a platter of pain and abuse and trauma and issues. And that's why I think it's so good to go to MDMA therapy first, because everything else can dredge up more. Why go for more when you've already got a buffet in front of you? MDMA work helps you come to peace and love and acceptance for what is already. And then, maybe after a few sessions like that, getting used to ceremony space, getting used to someone, a guide helping you, getting used to that sort of environment and dynamic and process in a safe way, and move on. That's how I advise people to enter into this work if they're new. And that's why I do it that way too.
Fully agree. And pretty much everybody that I know who is a guide, especially a one-on-one guide, I think over 80% of first-time sessions will be MDMA, and they get most of the work in a more gentle way done. They may do
Mm-hmm.
a few sessions, and then perhaps they'll go into mushrooms. That's usually the what I've seen is the protocol. Sometimes they start perhaps with a lower dose of mushroom if there are contraindications. I forget if
Mm-hmm.
that's how the word is pronounced. Is
Yes.
the Israeli guy in the room? So I always take the foreigner card there when I not sure about how to pronounce the word. But the yeah, I mean, and unfortunately, as you touched on, between the ADD and the anxiety and such, there are a good amount of people that I know personally, and I keep finding more and more people that are on medication, like the daily medication to manage anxiety. The amount of people that I keep finding out because I'm involved in the work, and that comes up a lot of times in the intake forms. Is like, look, I'm on this medication, and unfortunately, those don't work with MDMA, this SSRIs, and all kinds of stuff
Mm-hmm.
that prevents it. But yeah, for the most part, that has been the most profound. And I've recently, as the world keeps progressing, I've been hearing about people in their 60s. Some of my friends' parents that I'm so stoked for them that their parents have been so courageous and trusting to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's the amount of peace and resolution that I've heard, especially from these people in their 60s, having during these days that are in comparison to the other days that I know of and been through myself, are much healthier and much more welcoming. So I
Mm-hmm.
100% agree and support. And if there's anybody listening to this and thinking about doing medicine for healing, and perhaps, yeah, all the buzz has been about ayahuasca, kind of ayahuasca will be the last thing that I recommend. I do
Yeah.
think it's a great medicine, the grandmother, etc. But I think there's a lot of preparation work to be done before, and especially with, as you were saying, about the current state of affairs with retreats or immersion centers, we're going to call them. Unfortunately, not so many of them immersion, but the yeah, it's like opening the door to the cosmos, the heart to the cosmos in that way. It's super tough, and I think it's kind of like a training. Like, get the training done, get step by step. And I've seen also recently that you spend a good amount of time doing some physical training. It's just like any other muscle. Like, it's going to take building up to a certain
Mm-hmm.
place before you're gonna throw 300 pounds on a squat rack. So and ayahuasca may be over 300 pounds. Somebody who's been
I like that.
squatting in the past. It's been 3.5 years. I have my injury, and I'm being patient. I love physical training. I think it's fantastic. all across the board for so many things, especially for emotional well-being and motivation and etc. But yeah, it's that equivalent. So without training in doing medicine work and uh, really working on oneself to go ahead and put pretty much the biggest way that I know of, I do not know stronger medicine than ayahuasca. To jump in ahead, I do not recommend that. At the same time, I'm only gonna give information that way if somebody is being called to do that. This is just that's their calling. The calling is so strong. I'm not gonna be the one who's holding them down to not do it. I think everybody has a
Right.
path, just like you talked about your path with the pain with those medicines. But if you are feeling open to hearing advice from people who have done it, in this case, Anker and I, MDMA seems to be the best that I know of in terms of dipping your toes and doing
Mm.
work in the most gentle way. So that's 2 cents there. A lot of times with this podcast, I have the intentions of making it educational, inspirational, and have the nudge to people awaken to see who they are and really find out who they are, find the comfort and become more sovereign in their well-being, and eventually live. I think it's the most beautiful thing that I'm hearing about the village communal living that is happening there in Chiripo. Um,
Yeah.
Healthy living, that's what it sounds like. And it takes work, as you were saying. It doesn't sound like a walk in the park to live in the jungle.
Yeah. I feel like all the work I've done, all the medicine, all the ceremony, all the workshops, all the retreats has prepared me to live in this way. So in tune with nature, so close to people. I couldn't have been this close to people and trusted them so much to support me in my day to day living years ago. It's reduced me to such profound simplicity and helped me realize how challenging it is to be simple, how disconnected we are from the basic necessities and the basic structure and nature of life. And to think that it's taken me this much work and this long to come to such a simple place is both like fulfilling and it's sobering.
Hmm.
It's sobering to realize that the answers to so many of the issues in the world are very simple. That's because we've been so far removed from them. Clean water, clean food, healthy communities, stable families, right? Yeah. I find myself in this interesting position in life lately where part of me wants to continue traveling the world and activating groups and pods of men, offering this work and creating beautiful immersions. And the other part of me that wants us to stay here, start a family, get some land, invite my family to be part of the greater family unit, recreate that little you know, nuclear family village and have that be the example. Like create the foundation for future generations. That everything I do and create and believe become the cornerstone for my children to build on. Because this isn't going to happen overnight. If we're lucky, this is just the beginning. Most of us are first generation curse breakers of generational trauma and pain. And that's why it's so fucking messy and so hard. And it gets to be. It's not a walk in the park. And I'm reminded of like, there's some spiritual teacher, I forget, went to Spirit Rock once, and he started his spiritual talk by saying, I don't recommend this work to anybody because it's not easy. It's not. And we don't need to all be doing it. But if you're feeling the call and this kind of conversation brings you into a podcast, like there's some good information here, some good ways to start safely, to dip your toes in without getting burned, without getting crushed under 300 pounds of ayahuasca. Ketamine is also a good place to start too. I want to throw my hat in for that as well. I support a lot of people going to clinics in the States, and it is profound for treatment resistant depression and anxiety. I will say that I don't recommend going to any clinic that doesn't offer coaching. A lot of them don't.
Hmm.
A lot of them are cash grabs and they're capitalizing on this movement. And there are plenty out there that do have coaches, and that makes all the difference with that particular medicine.
Good to
So,
know.
yeah.
I don't have much experience. I have heard some stories of people with K-assisted therapies that seem to be doing really well for their a lot of times really deep depression, but I really have not much information and knowledge. Do you have any recommendations of specific clinics that you know of in the United States?
Yeah, so see if I remember. In Austin, you have Nepenthe Wellness. You have Illuma. It's in Austin itself. Up in Denver, you have oh, it's escaping me right now. I'll come back to that. In Phoenix, there's Advanced Wellness and Pain. There's Enlighten. In Boca Raton, there's KMD. Um, the one in Denver is escaping me right now. Hope it comes back. But there's a good handful out there.
Nice.
And also, if you're someone who's interested in becoming a part of this work and wanting support in the harm reduction, in the safety, we need more coaches than anything else right now. That's what's making the difference. If you're looking for a good program to try on, Being True to You is the one I went through. And the one thing I'll say about why I think they're better than every other program out there is because their background is in addiction recovery. So they
Mm,
start off teaching you how to work with people who are addicted. And why is that important? Because everything that brings us to medicine work is an addiction. Not all
mm,
capital A with food, drugs, sex, alcohol, but control patterns like images, behavior, thoughts, screens. So spending the first couple months without training, getting really clear about the nature of consciousness and how our trauma ends up evolving into these outward reaching dynamics, these energetic dynamics that want to solve problems with addiction was makes all the difference. All the
mm,
difference. Yeah.
mm. Good to know.
And going back to this idea of how we're at where we're at largely because psychology, psychiatry, pharmaceuticals have failed us. Not all of them, but generally speaking, they haven't gotten the job done. This is why psychedelics are coming in, and this is why coaching is such a huge space right now. It's because we're kind of closer to people than the psychologists and psychiatrists. If we develop a relationship with them and we open up, we can become more like the peer that's guiding them on their way, more like the village elder or the village seer or the chieftain or a guide. Like it's bringing us back into tribal units. Now, I will say, my teacher and some of the most talented guides out there for psychedelics and plant medicines are also therapists. And
Mm,
those people are like wizards. But I would say the majority are just, it's an occupation. And it's also not to blame or shame, but it's a job, you know? And they aren't trying to connect to you as a tribe member, as a family member. They look at you, they call it, what do they call it now? Not, is a bias. They look at you as someone who has a condition and they work with you as a depressed person, as an anxious person, which is so backwards. You work with a coach. We're like, okay, you're experiencing this thing called depression. What does that mean to you? How does that affect you? What's your relationship to that? Because in the end, it's just an energetic imbalance of some sort that you are living with. But we don't treat
mhm,
you like you have a problem because also we've been there. And that's the
mhm,
underlying limiting reagent, you could say, in the equation of being a helpful guide or a coach for anyone going through this work is the amount of experience. If you have a therapist who wants to support you through integration, they haven't done medicine, it's not going to work. Simple. And you could work with someone who's done like, hundreds of journeys, but has no education whatsoever in formal depth psychology, and they could be the best guide you've ever had.
Good stuff. Thank you for that. I want to throw another recommendation there, especially for substance addiction, and that's I had Todd Shipman, who has led over 2,600 combo ceremonies and specializes in breaking addictions with substances. And that's I don't remember exactly the episode number. I think maybe episode 12. So I'm going to throw the link for that one. And he has 100% success with substances as big as people that have been on heroin addicts for 16 years. So not as encompassing for addictions with behavior, perhaps, but for substance abuse combo has been, and his methodology and very gentle scientific combo has been helpful with that. So if that's you or somebody that you know, I'm going to throw that link in there, and perhaps that's going to be helpful. There's something that I want to touch on, and it flipped my mind, but I do want to hear, if you don't mind sharing. It looks like you've done a ceremony, perhaps a solo ceremony with psilocybin a couple of days ago. I'd love to hear, if you don't mind sharing, how did it go? Integration, love to hear
Yeah.
about that since it's
Well,
fresh.
depending on when this releases, I have a recent post about it, and I was feeling the call to do some work with myself for a while. I'm like, the mushrooms. Yeah, I gotta sit with the mushrooms again. Do more solo work. And the beautiful thing about doing my own ceremony is, as I'm creating the space, it starts to become apparent to me why I'm doing it. So I'm tidying up the home. I'm creating my launch pad, blessing the space with Palo Santo and sage, and I'm cutting flowers for the altar. I'm picking cards. And then it dawns on me. It's like, oh, okay, this ceremony is about my family. Not just that, this is why I do the work. I work with men so they can hopefully create stable family units again. But my work with myself is about working with my family, because I feel like the deepest work that we can do has to do with our ties to our family. Like, as a quick aside, I have had the privilege and honor of serving my mother MDMA and my younger brother recently.
Wow.
And the shifts I have noticed in my family are profound. It's nothing quite like it.
Wow.
They say you heal the mother, you heal everyone. You heal your brother, you heal yourself. And my relationships with them it's almost like I'm a child again. It's like that pure, that close.
Wow.
So, okay, as I'm putting the altar together, I realize that, and I go grab some photographs of me and my family, me and my brothers, during the last time we all were together so many years ago. And I take the 6 grams, and the one thing I was worrying about the whole time was like the music, because you really had to have everything set up. And the music is a big part of the experience. And I had no idea what I was going to do this time. And strange enough, once I open my phone and I kind of go to my journey playlist, I'm just like picking bits and pieces for everything. Like, yes, this, yes, this, yes, this. Oh, this playlist that my little brother made when he came to see me a few months ago for his MDMA journey. I'm going to put that in there. And up until the point where that music came on, everything was kind of like standard super deep hero's dose journey, where like I'm just having a bunch of wild visions, nothing super coherent, just trying to breathe and keep myself together and not move, because every time I moved, I felt like I was going to vomit. And then the music from his journey comes on, and I just get clear. Like, my brothers come to me, and I'm feeling them, and there's so much grief. I pause the music because it was about to move on to something a little cheerier. Like, I'm like, no. Like, I need to spend some time in silence with this, and how much I miss them, and how much I love them, and how good and strong they both are. And then I feel a call to go to the altar. And I'm just like crawling to the altar, and I know what I'm going to do. And I know looking at those photos is going to tear me apart, but in the ways that I'm here to experience. And I just take a look at this photo. Like, I'm like jumped on my older brother's back, and like my older brother's like collapsing underneath him. And we're just being really silly, like a real good brotherly moment, a lot of joy. And I just collapsed to the ground, choking on grief for the pain that they are experiencing, that they've gone through, for the loss, for the disconnection. in the paradox that I want nothing more than to be closer to my family, but I'm farther away from them than ever. But trusting that, like, this is it. This is meant to be happening, and that this is my part. And we're all doing our parts. And my part is to do this work, to heal what it is between us and the family. So after that, I started to come back to myself, and it was raining outside. It was dusk. And I was still with the medicine. So I start hobbling. I'm on my feet now. I'm walking again. And one of the best things about being in Costa Rica in this land is I don't have to wear clothing. I pretty much only put clothing on to be on camera. And I'm just walking around outside in the rain. And I can still see the beauty of the life around the plants, the colors, the geometry, that which is usually invisible to us. And I feel how strong I am in my body. As you noted, I've been doing a lot of work reintegrating my relationship with like my strength, my physical body, after so many years of kind of putting that aside because I was hurt, because I thought my injury, my pain was my teacher. But I'm like, oh, I got the message now, so let's get strong again. And I felt connected and embodied in a way I never had. Like the words just came through. Like, I am embodied. Like I am whole, which is so funny because the men's retreat I'm offering in October with my teacher, the first one we're doing in Ojai, is called wholeness. These things, you know, they just come through and it's all connected. That's what I'm doing for myself, you know? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow, it's been full circle. The injury that stopped me from being so physical and so vital and so just like strong, that put me on my spiritual path is no longer in the way. And now I have all of it at my disposal. And I'm here. And I've never been healthier or stronger or more alive or taking such good care of myself. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I mean, wow. Huge in terms of your brothers sitting with that and being with that. And yeah, all of that really touches my heart and I think is probably resonating with a lot of people. This sounds like the power of the medicine with the power of the spirit and the body and all of that combined with all the work that Anker has done for a long time to be able to go that deep, integrate, and not only feel the pain, but also celebrate life. And I think that's really the beauty of being in these bodies, the beauty of the lives that we chose, whether you want to believe that you chose this life or not. I think we choose it every day. Speaking of anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts, it's a choice. It's a choice to be here constantly. Every second is a choice to be in this body. I don't necessarily say that if somebody chooses to take over their lives, they're not going to come back pretty much immediately, let's say, in the sense of there is time or not, to work on the same lessons. I think from my understanding, that's what's going to happen. It's going to be another incarnation until karma has been worked through. So I don't think there's a way out, but it's still a choice. So not to say that I'm any sage or expert on those matters, but that's my current understanding. I'm actually curious because I'm going through a very similar thing. I have this 3.5-year rib injury. My rib popped out of place. Until then, I was training about 5 days a week, in pretty good shape for a very long time. This injury was a blessing in the way that it really shifted my work to work with men, work with medicine, and a lot of other directions. I was doing a lot of tech work. Beforehand, I was doing some medicine expansion work, but it was really, as you talked about, like the full commitment. But I've been avoiding, and I shedded 20 pounds to just put the muscles away, and hopefully let the body get into more ease with that. And then I didn't want to, and still don't want to fire movement in a way that I'm going to be building a crooked tree. So in exaggeration, I feel like my rib cage is turned like 30 degrees to the right. I'm curious, what was your injury and how you made the decision to like, all right, like it's enough. Like I got the message and now we can integrate back to strong body, which I'm yearning. And at the same time, it's like I'm standing here. I feel like the pain in my, in my traps and behind my rib. And it's been quite a journey and learning what's behind my rabbit, which I'll touch on briefly, but that's ancestral trauma. It spoke to me after years of asking what's going on, and then, oh boy, when I was in a retreat on medicine, it spoke to me. Was one of the most uncomfortable experiences that I've ever had.
Mm. Well, it all started when I decided to practice Muay Thai. I had already left my job in GE, and I was kind of become a bit of like a rebel, and living a very rock star lifestyle, doing whatever I wanted, making more on unemployment than most of my friends. And I was back in the greater Boston area, and I joined a Muay Thai gym, and it was all fire, all outward, all yang, like no recovery practices, no yin practices. And I eventually moved to Los Angeles, and I was missing the practice, so I got my own equipment and gear and did something really foolish. I put ankle weights on, and I was kicking a heavy bag with ankle weights on. It's just like, in retrospect, it's so dumb. And in doing that, I tore my plantaris in my right calf. So this is that mostly vestigial muscle that's contracted when you're on the balls of your feet, like Muay Thai fighters stand. And I didn't know what was going on. My chiropractor thought it was like a sprain. He was giving me some active release technique, and then eventually, some months later, it's like, yeah, you're still having a problem. Go see my friend who's get you an MRI. He's like, you have a torn muscle in there, and now it's healed funny, and it's gonna be complicated for a while. So that put an end to my martial arts habit, and it put an end to this way I identify with myself as being this like vigorous, like strong, very active man, and noticing how much I identified with that looking back in the past. So I started to seek out help, working with massage therapists, working with energy practitioners, playing around with yoga and meditation and all these more subtle arts. And it brought me into the world of healing practitioners and energy work because I really cared about my body, my well being, which has always been my teacher, which is why when I work with people, it's always about, okay, how are you going to integrate this practice through, rather, integrate this insight in these experiences through practice? It's all about developing a practice with yourself. The body is the shadow, is what shadow yoga says. We come from the light, from pure source, and we're enveloped in this body, and this contains all of the pain. So body work, exercise, yoga, meditation, it's all working things out. It's all integration. So I got really into not being in the gym and not being this like really aggressive man. And then I got into all this shadow masochistic work with ayahuasca and doing more ceremony and focusing on everything that was light and getting in touch with my feminine side, which most people are doing to a fault these days, which is part of the arc of where men's work is going in a larger narrative I can talk about if we have time. And the story that my pain is my teacher, that if I take good enough care of myself in these spiritual ways, then I won't have this pain. The pain eventually subsided in the leg and it became something in my lower back, which I started to become curious about. I'm like, I had an injury in the right side of my body, but now I had this like equilateral lower back pain. I don't see a full connection, but it came some time afterward. Like my leg's completely fine now, but it's the lower back pain that started to show up a lot. So I got curious about that. I'm like, what's going on here? Psychosomatically, energetically, stability, creativity, finances, these like root things. So I started to do some work on like relationship to money, like money energetics, by reading some books and realizing that I had a belief that I deserved to be in pain because it had me looking at limiting beliefs. And I had known I have changed so many aspects of my life through focus, determination, and effort, but not this one. I've worked in everything else. I've changed my career. I've changed my home. I've changed my communities. But I still choose to be in pain because I believed I deserved to be in pain. So that kind of shocked me. And I sat with that for a bit. And then before long, I found myself in a pretty stable place here. I was doing that money exploration here in Costa Rica. And it wasn't until about like a little under a year ago, I felt like, okay, I've got my thing here. I've got my practice. Like, it's stable. I can depend upon it. It's getting better and better. And I don't have to worry about like building or creating stability. So then from that place with a strong foundation, I'm like, okay, let's work on me now. And then I went into a 40-day detox container with a coach I met through Being True to You, who was a functional nutritionist. And we went through the full on protocol of figuring out, well, first, like elimination diet to like let the guts and all the organs relax and detox, and then bring in foods one by one to see what works for you. I'd never done that before. I've done all kinds of diets and water fasts, but like not this fully laser focused like look at myself and realizing what I should be eating. And after I did that, which was amazing and brought a lot of vitality back into my life, I'm like, okay, what next? Because I do really well when I put myself first, when I am choosing me and having a project about my well-being before anything else. And that's how I've always operated with like my long morning practice. But having others help you with it who are experts is so much better. So I'm like, okay, the body. I just took at the inside. Let's look at the outside. And I saw an ad on Instagram for this coaching program that looked like it was really solid, really well done by some incredibly well respected and really successful trainers. They were talking about how they're going to give you like a magazine, a cover page body, this and that. And they were looking for people specifically in Costa Rica, which was more of a targeted ad. I saw they were looking at other parts of the world too. But I'm like, well, if they can do this for people and have all these great results, and if I just want to be pain free and full of energy, I think they can do that. So I'll give it a shot. And that's what I did. That's what I'm doing now. That's why I'm going back into the gym, because I've decided to not let pain be my teacher anymore. Now I'm deciding to put all my creative energy into creating a body that's connected and that's whole, that feels as powerful as the life I've created around me. And it's working so far. There's still some tweaking to do, but there's something about coming full circle, feeling comfortable in the gym again, and still integrating the other things I've learned with yoga, meditation, and breath work. Honestly, some of the things that have been so transformative are so simple, like drinking 4 liters of water a day instead of like 2/8 cups. I asked my coach about this. I'm like, well, it's a lot of water. He's like, yeah, and that's the amount you should be drinking. The standard narrative will say drink 8 cups/2 liters, but that's the minimum. Same thing with exercise. 3 days a week is the minimum, especially for a man your age. If you want to keep up and have high energy with this testosterone issue we're all struggling with, you got to work out a lot. And it seems like a lot, but you're going to feel great. You're going to get more done every day. So that part. And then this whole 10,000 steps thing, like movement and exercise are different. And I'm like, oh my God, I've been spending all these years sitting at a desk. And as I started moving more, I'm like, I felt so much better. I have a feeling that movement might be the actual thing that heals the back pain, because I've been just like spending all this time here. My body's become good at sitting. It is a big challenge right now to get 10,000 steps, honestly. But I think it's a challenge I need to shore up to, because I'm so still. So I take all my messages on my phone, like listening and watching and giving while walking around my little cabin here. I take a little jog break in the afternoon after being on my coaching calls, and I'll get like 20 or 30 minutes of jogging in. And then I started at night to like clear everything out, just have a little solo dance party. I'm getting about 6,000 and 7,000 steps a day most days, which feels good because I did a little research into like where this number came from, and it's pretty arbitrary. Like some Japanese clockmaker came up with this number, and it's not mired in like physical science or nutrition, but it's one of those numbers that people like, So it's coming back to the basics: hydration, movement, exercise, eating well. I got that part down, thankfully. But it's just like the real lesson coming through is how distracted we get from the simple things. When we're just doing and doing and doing, we don't see the impact of what we're doing, and how it's shaping us. All the sitting and avoiding being with this story that I deserve to be in pain. I didn't see that until I got curious. I'm like, wow, all these years. I mean, yeah, it was teaching me, but I was choosing it. It was my
Hmm.
choice.
Thank you for sharing. I think as you're saying, there's the teaching, and then there's like the moment where the teaching has been, you learned the lesson. We don't need that teacher anymore. We got to move on to the next thing. There are a few things that I want to touch on since I've been so excited and passionate about taking care of my body and living a holistic lifestyle. And I present myself as a holistic lifestyle and awakening guide. So I have my 2 cents there that hopefully will resonate with a lot of people. And the first one that I borrow from Dr. Joe Dispenza, whom I talk about quite often on the podcast, is that the body is your instrument of consciousness. So to speak about the shadow, you can think about it scientifically. The light is hitting some sort of a prism, and that prism, the reflection of that, the illusion of that is the matter, is the kind of the solidity, the illusion of the solidity that is your body. So it's your instrument of consciousness. Whether you're doing medicine work, you're doing training, stress training, whatever you're doing with your body, this is your vehicle. This is your meat suit. Your, as I like to say, your loaner for this life. And treating it like a temple will definitely benefit you in all the ways in terms of the feelings you're having, the experiences you're having. Make the most out of it. At the same time, of course, we know a lot of athletes that put all of their efforts into their body, and that's their way of working through karma. I see life more holistically, working on the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical body. Those are the four tenets that at least I have in mind. And then when it comes to the body, hydration, for example, I've toyed around with hydration for a long time. And in different places, I need to hydrate differently. What I have seen is the most beneficial things for one to do is to drink full spectrum living water. On my website, on yonihavana.com/hydration, you'll find 7 or 8 articles that I put on hydration, water. What does it mean? Why is full spectrum living water, structure water to some extent, we can call it in a more condensed way, living water is going to be the best for you. And what can you do? Also, to if you find yourself struggling to drink 4 liters or a gallon of water, what can you do to drink a little bit less? There are water concoctions. You can add, you can drink juices in some ways, add some fruit extract, lemon, all kinds of other things, and of course salts. Water with salt is the essence of life. That's just life. And crystals, salts are crystals. So some 2 cents there on hydration
Yeah.
in the body. And I think as you're talking about movement and steps and such, little things that you can add on, and it's a big trend now. The knees over toes guy, walking backwards while we're
Mhm.
aging. I'm mid-30s now, but as we're aging, walking backwards helps with your tibialis muscles, so you can change it up and walk backwards a little bit, walk uphill with backwards, dancing around it. I think it doesn't have to necessarily be as Anker is doing walking per se for the 10,000 steps. You can be creative. I think
Mhm.
dancing fills a lot of those, hits a lot of those marks of movement and moving the body, especially in all kinds of natural movements the body wants to move into. Ecstatic dance seems like a fun
Yeah.
party to move the body and get all these things going on and really tune into the present moment. So there's so much going on with this holistic lifestyle principles in life. And I think a routine is helpful. And actually, what I found with my life, and I see it with others, is that when they have a routine, it creates more freedom in their life. Because when they do take care of
Yeah.
their bodies, they have a morning routine, they go to sleep around the same time, their body's working kind of like a clock, it's operating in a high capacity, then they don't focus on the pain that they may have in their body or the lack of motivation or beating themselves up mentally about what they have not done. So doing things sometimes and kind of for the Jocko Willink way of make yourself do it, make yourself do some things that you know are going to be essential for you. And hydration, nutrition, movement, sleep, all of these things are going to be so essential. That's just the way your body works. There's some things that are natural laws. There's really nothing to do about it. It's just the way it is. So there are ways to be creative about it. There are all kinds of infinite possibilities of taking care of yourself. But I do recommend putting that as an emphasis, especially as for myself too. I can get carried away with like, oh, medicine work, spiritual work, sitting down for hour and a half long meditations, and kind of like, oh, I've got my chakras and my energy centers all aligned. Like, oh, I can put movement to the side. And yeah, we can get fanatics, the biohackers especially, where like the joke is like, I had like a 7-hour morning routine. I've been there. I've done all of it. the balance is essential, and really reading how things are working, whether the financial needs a bit more work, or the spiritual, or the emotional. And I think having, as Anker was touching on, having teachers, having coaches, and people like, oh, why would I need a coach? With a coach in any domain, somebody who's been putting a lot of emphasis and work to get better at that, you're going to be moving about 10 times better. That's kind of the general rule.
Mhm.
So that's my idea on hiring coaches. And a lot of times, yeah, I'm not going to be able to afford perhaps hiring 10 coaches at a time or working on a million one things at a time. Just kind of like chunking it down. How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So that's my little rant here on holistic lifestyle and the body. And I am in great gratitude of my body and the things that it's doing for me, and how we are co-collaborating on this life.
Mhm. Yeah. Amazing.
Well, we have another 10 minutes or so. I know you have another thing coming up soon. I do want to hear your take on the femininity swing of the pendulum.
Mm. Okay.
So getting into the feminine, really finding there's masculine and feminine, I think, in everything, but like what happened there?
So let's see. Let's say back in around the time, I think it was like the Vietnam War, where people decided if that was what men did, if they went to war and they fought and they killed, they didn't want to be that. And it was the first notable recent movement where men were taking a step back from what was seen as traditionally masculine. And then the hippie movement came in, the peace and the love and the LSD and these like softer, gentler men. So that ended up creating a dynamic where you ended up having over time like more masculine women to meet that energy, and they thought that that was the solution at the time, because that was hot on the heels of like the whole 50s family dynamic where you had, the man was the head of the household, the breadwinner. He went to work, he came home, and the woman took care of the house, took care of the kids and everything. And there's some wisdom to the roles there that men and women are good at, but the energy of appreciation and respect was missing. Men during that time pretty much only valued women like for their bodies, not their minds, not their ideas, not their creativity. So there was a lack of emotional maturity in men then. So getting back to what I was just discussing, the hippie movement comes, men start to open up, become a little softer. That goes on for a couple decades, and then where we're at now, where this new age spirituality, to simplify what's going on, there are these men who are around saying that they're like kings and women who are queens, but the men are like very beta. They don't stand up, they don't speak their mind, they don't protect, they don't create order. They they get too wrapped up in the notion of goddess worship, which is a healthy thing if you don't continually prostrate yourself to it. Like, the goddess is the underlying animate force of all things, and it is the substrate of all, let's say, the Indian and Hindu traditions that we'd like to incorporate into our new age spiritual practices and learn from. In its ways, it's animate, it's important, but you don't put yourself below it. Because if you put women on pedestals, they look down on you. They eventually will resent you. And what's happening with the women in the new age is that they're coming into their power. They're being given more room, more space to express, but there's still, I see, a great deal of wounding that they're healing from. So while they're getting into all this dark feminine, like Kali Durga related stuff, which is great to an extent, but if that's what you're going to primarily embody yourself with, and you want men to like serve you and worship you, that doesn't last the test of time. That creates a lot of resentment. Women, feminine women, ultimately want to be able to relax and to be led. so they can be in their feminine, they can be in their flow, they can be in that creative genius. And men, when they're in their masculine and they are stable, they lead and they create order for creativity and femininity to thrive. And there's a dance there. So we are coming out of that. We're in this transition phase where the men's work is coming back online and men are kind of like coming out of the corners and getting a little more courage to speak up around what it is to be a man, because they're not so afraid of being attacked now, because Me Too was recent and that had to happen. But it was a hard time to be a man, to be a masculine man, because we were seen as the problem, because we were being kind of colluded with the idea of the patriarchy. You know, if you're a cis, white, heteronormative man, you are the problem. There are many people that simply look at me and like, oh, so you're in Costa Rica doing medicine work. Geez, what a grifter colonist you are. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. That's your pain. I see you and I hear you. And if you say I have privilege, what I hear is I have power. And if I have power, this is the best damn way I can use it. So I'm like impervious to attacks now, but it's still sad to see how prevalent it is. So this is the turning point. And this is why men's work is so important right now. If we show up and we just start to gather our courage and realize who we are and continue to circle with men and learn to trust them and individuate into mature, masculine patriarchs, we could turn this shit around. But it's going to take a commitment.
Powerful message. Thank you, sir. What a beautiful way to end this conversation. And I'm sure there'll be another one. There are a few more things, especially on my mind at the moment, that I want to get into. And I know you have another appointment coming up. I want to give you huge thanks for the work that you're doing and the messages you're sending to the universe, and the work you're doing for your family lineage. Huge kudos, huge thanks, huge honor to have a conversation and to get to know you. Thank you for the time today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Yoni. It was a pleasure.
Where can people find you, connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Kyle, KHIEL.Anker, ANKER. I share most of my story there. And yeah, I've got a men's retreat coming up in Ojai the first weekend of October. And if you're interested in that, you can send me a DM. I got a few spots left. And that's pretty much it. You know, I'm welcome to answer any questions and talk to people like, directly one-on-one about any of the topics that came up here around medicine. If you're thinking of going to Costa Rica and you're trying to figure out your way forward, I'm at that place where, I make myself available to those conversations. I really lock arms with people when they want to go on their journey. So yeah, I just want people to see me as a resource for navigating this work safely and with integrity and with someone that cares.
Beautiful. Ho to you and the work you're doing. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Go check out Anker on Instagram. I will throw in all the links for everybody we talked about. And if you're feeling cold, you know what to do. So we'll see you there, man.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Blessings.
Well, lovely beings, I hope you enjoyed and were inspired by this conversation as much as I was. You can find the full show notes and all episodes on my website at yonihavana.com/podcast. If you are a man and you are called to do transformational work, to become a better man, to find and grow the divinity within you, and you are longing a community of masculine men who share a passion for both, please check out Men of Integrity by going to moi.community. Lastly, if you are enjoying the Yoni Havana podcast, I'd be so grateful if you take a moment to leave us a rating and a review on your podcast app of choice. The Yoni Havana podcast is a brand new show, and your support would help reach new people by rating higher on the algorithms. Also, your feedback would help me deliver the best experience to you as the show keeps evolving. Much love and a big aho. See you on the next one.